This is a significant gathering and meeting for us, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this meeting place, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects on behalf of those present and the SSE to elders past, present, future, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be in attendance tonight. In terms of housekeeping, restrooms you may have already found. We have gents just outside in the foyer. Ladies and accessible is upstairs, and there is both stairs and a lift to access those. In the odd event that there is some kind of emergency, you will hear some sirens. Please just keep an eye out for any of the SSE team. We will guide you to a marshalling point which is out in Jones Street Mall. Just look for one of us. We'll look after you, but that's not something that we anticipate happening. We are very social, so for those of you that are making comments on social media, if you could also attach an at SSE New South Wales, and that will register us with it. It's a real pleasure of mine. I've spent the last couple of days at various events with Sean Weiss. So I'm really pleased to introduce him within our own campus to you. For those of you that are here from one of our member institutions, for those of you that perhaps have got that burning idea and are perhaps falling into the Wantrepreneur category, I think tonight is going to be very special. For those of you that are founders, I'm sure you will pick something up as well. And for those that are generally interested, this is an excellent opportunity to hear from someone who has had a career in venture capital, has then moved into academia with Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. And for those of you that are familiar with Ryerson, has a very significant reputation that has built over the last decade or so in terms of its entrepreneurship programming and its impact on the entrepreneurial ecosystem in that country. Sean spent 5 years as a consultant on CBC's Shark Tank, or Dragon's Den program, I should say, much like the commonly Shark Tank that you may be familiar with, before stepping in front of the camera on the Oprah Winfrey Network with his own show called The Naked Entrepreneur. Thankfully, he's fully dressed tonight as he joins us, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some great insights from you, Sean. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Sydney. Sorry, is this Melbourne or Sydney? Hello, Sydney. One more. Hello, Sydney. Thank you for coming and spending some time with me. If you wish to take a photo, I will remind you that I have a face for radio. Okay. There's my Twitter handle. I'm not cool enough to Snapchat or Insta, but you can. It helps when you use the tags, not because we need the likes, but because it tells us what's resonating. So feel free. I'll also leave my email at the end if you want to ask a question, but maybe don't want to do it live. You can by all means email me. I'd be happy to. We have a pretty packed schedule. The first topic is about me, which as a Canadian is a very uncomfortable thing. I don't want to talk about myself and tell you how great I am. Unfortunately, we have a political movement around the world about fake news and about alternate truths, and we have a president that makes up facts. So we've had to teach our constituents critical thinking and figuring out why they're saying what they're saying. I know you have an election on now. I'd be surprised if it's all that different. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, just to put the context of where this knowledge is coming from, so you can decide for yourself whether or not it's for you. I will warn you that once a professor, always a professor. I teach Socratically, so I will be asking questions of the audience. We do have microphones hidden around you, so if you want to speak, just give us a little flag. It is being beamed out to the 3 people on the internet watching it, so make sure you wait for the mic or they won't hear your question, and that'll be 3 people still confused. I really want to know more about you because I can tailor this depending on what you're interested in, on where you're going. And then at the end, we're going to have some Q&A, and then we'll have some beverages, and then we can have some more Q&A, and I'm here, so ask away. A little bit about me. This is the uncomfortable part. I started my first business at 13. I took my first company public at 31. I was named the National Mentor of the Year. In Canada, we have a very specific definition of mentor. A mentor is someone that has done what you're trying to achieve. So if you want to be a gold medal Olympian, a mentor would be someone who has a gold medal. Coaches are those people who help but haven't done it. So to be honored by my peers to be named this was a great privilege. Also a privilege to be honored by our Prime Minister as the National Fellow for Startup Communities, which is really about getting entrepreneurship out of the city and across the great country of ours. I spent time in Israel as their visiting scholar at Tel Aviv University, and since that age of 13, I've had 5, perhaps 6, depending how you count them, startups myself. I sold the last one in June for $25 million. It was in the cannabis space, so don't get too excited. It's the new gold. So if you're not making money in it, you probably should. My PhD is from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. I studied engineering and economics in my undergrads and a master's of business and finance, as well as a law degree in corporate finance. I tried to be a lawyer, but it wasn't entrepreneurial enough, so I got into venture capital. I've been at 3 funds. Ernst & Young has a fund. I worked for the first 5 years at their venture capital group. Then I spent 10 years with Spencer Trask. It's a venture company you've never heard of, but you may have heard of what they did. Mr. Spencer Trask is the angel investor behind Thomas Edison. So that's the family money that came from General Electric, that came from the light bulb, and years and years and years later, that's the billionaire that runs Spencer Trask. In the 2008-10 financial crisis, my billionaire boss became a millionaire, and I got freed up to return to my home country of Canada. It's funny because you can laugh. And I took a post at the university. Once I arrived, they told me I had to finish my PhD, so I had to go do that. So now I teach on campus. I'm an associate professor, tenured. I publish. I've written a number of books. One has even done well. I spent 5 seasons on Shark Tank, which we call Dragon's Den, before being spun off into my own little show called The Naked Entrepreneur. It is available on YouTube and iTunes. We're not cool enough for Netflix. But it's really just myself and a billionaire sitting down talking to 100 students live and up front, the truth. Not what you see on TV, not what you read in magazines, but what it's like to have a family while you're running a business 24/7. And the reason we do that is we're the home of entrepreneurship in our country, so we can't give out these false myths and make it seem like it is in the movies. We have to give them real-life experiences. Even more so in Toronto, Canada, where the university is located, 55% of all our citizens were born outside of our country. So we have so many perspectives that we want to integrate into our mosaic that exposing entrepreneurship is just one of many of our great priorities. For the most of the time, I'm neither a professor nor an academic. I work at our fund. So I'm a partner at Ryerson Futures, which is a small fund that's focus is to kickstart innovation in Toronto. About 20% of our companies are Ryerson students or Ryerson faculty, and the rest we just give a t-shirt that says Ryerson, and we call them part of our team. So we welcome everyone. These are examples of companies that in the last 36 months we've written checks to. I'll save you the trouble. Most are software. Most are software as a service. Most are business to business. Canadians are not very confident at business to consumer, B2C. We don't know what the next Tinder is going to be until America tells us. So we focus instead on business to business mostly as a country, but as a fund. So we go and look at the problems that Fortune 500 companies are having and solve them with software. And our founders come from all walks of life and all parts of the planet, but they all wear the Ryerson t-shirt. I'd like to learn a little bit about you. So if I could just have a show of hands, how many people have an entrepreneur in the family? Brother, sister, daughter, mother, grandfather, great-grandfather? Okay? How many people know someone in their immediate friendship group that's an entrepreneur? Right? Now remember, I'm not talking about the sexy, high-tech 1% Google entrepreneur. I'm talking about the person who works hard every day to build a business, and whether that business is a restaurant or a dry cleaner, it's still entrepreneurship. Right? At our university, we have 20 full-time faculty. Only a handful of us come from that startup niche, but all of us have been entrepreneurs. We have family entrepreneurs, generational entrepreneurs, because at our school, you're not allowed to teach until you've done. And so a lot of our faculty come, and that's not true of just the business school, but our radio and television faculty, all their professors are on the TV. They're all the directors of those shows. And so when I talk about The Naked Entrepreneur, the show we created, I always leave out the most important part. It's a fourth-year class. We have an HD studio on campus, and our fourth-year radio and television students shoot the show, edit the show, light the show, make this seem to work on TV, right? And they do it all so that when they graduate and someone says, why do I give you a job here? They say, because I've already done the job. And they point to a nationally broadcast TV. Now, it's broadcast at 7 a.m. on Sunday. So it's not like a really good show. It's not Survivor. Okay? It's two people sitting and having a conversation you would never believe a millionaire would ever say. Talking about jail and alcoholism and all variety of life, because they're from all variety of life. And it was very impactful to see that so are my students. My students have also gone to jail. They've also made mistakes. They've also birthed families. They've had experience. So to keep showing them white guys from America isn't an option. So we created this Naked Entrepreneur. How many think one day they might want to be an entrepreneur? Now here's the big one. How many people think that in 10 years, whatever they're doing to make a living will have some component of entrepreneurship in it? Solopreneurship, driving an Uber, starting a business. So wake up, because it's happening all over the world, right? Toronto is a hub of entrepreneurship because we need it to be. The economy's changing. Jobs for life are not the future. And if you want change in the world, you want entrepreneurs. Right? Because the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity and takes action. The difference between an opportunity and an idea is action. I would like a Star Trek teleporter so I could come to Sydney every week and teleport 1 hour away. That's a nice idea. It's not an opportunity. We don't have the quantum technology and computing power to allow that to happen. But an entrepreneur sees an opportunity, an unmet need, something that there's not enough of. Something that needs to be done differently. And that includes the hairdresser who comes to the town that has no hairdresser. But there is a difference between a startup and a small and medium-sized enterprise. And in return for this mystery package, if someone can tell me the answer. So, who knows the difference between a small and medium-sized business and a startup? Any student, anyone? It's a prize, come on. Okay. It's 2 prizes. It's 2 prizes. My friend in the red jacket. You got to wait for the microphone. They're going to come to you. He was hiding. You didn't see him there, did you?
A startup is a business that hasn't existed before. Is it a business that hasn't existed? So age, something novel. Okay, let's go over here. No prize for you. Let's go over here. Young lady in the black sweater.
Small and medium business, kind of like wanting to make profit, like wanting to make money.
And startups and not-for-profits don't try to make profit?
Like they're trying to, like, doing a breakthrough or something.
No, not even close.
Cool.
Let's go behind you in the blue, my friend.
Is it scalability?
It is not scalability. Scalability is defined as the ability to grow revenue without growing its costs. Here's someone. Let's hear the answer, sir. Give it to me. I got 2 presents. Now they don't want it. Tim from Canada. Tell them the difference between a small and medium-sized enterprise and a startup.
That's me.
Oh, okay.
You jump in there.
I'll just put it in there. The first thing I thought about, the startup has pretty much, the world is their oyster, and the small and medium is, they've already started to be defined.
I'll give you one of the 2 bags. You're the closest. Okay? They're empty bags, by the way. I'm just telling you the prize is the bag itself. I got time for one more, the handsome person in the back of the room. That's you. Have some self-confidence.
I got the microphone. Over here. Over here.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. Very sharp, but it's not a problem of semantics. Let me answer it for you and I'll keep the bag. There'll be more. A startup is a novel enterprise that is searching for a repeatable, scalable, sustainable business model. A small and medium-sized enterprise is a new business that knows its business model. If the hairdresser is going to charge per haircuts, as hairdressers have charged for thousands of years, that's the business model, right? We know what a business model is, how you make the money. If you're a pizza place, it's the ingredients, the out-of-work Melbourne students, and then you sell it for a lot more, right? So if you know your business model, if you know how to make money, you're not a startup. The job of a startup is to experiment, to try different approaches, to see if we can sell it in a different way. If that hairdresser decided to sell a $99.99 all the haircuts you could have, that would make it a startup. Trying different revenue models. We all had Blockbuster Video, right? We all went to get the video. We like to say in Canada, uphill in the snow, both ways. What happened to Blockbuster? Someone did it better. How did Netflix do it better? They made it so I don't have to walk outside 20 minutes in the snow to pick up the video I forgot to get my wife on the way home. I just click it. You know what? Netflix is amazing, right? It's got 10 times the number of content. It's 10 times easier. They don't charge me late fees, and I don't have to wear pants. I can choose whatever I want pants free. Don't visualize. And that's not true at Blockbuster. So why did Blockbuster die so quickly? Because they failed to innovate the business model. They were making all their money off of late fees. If you're making money off of your clients failing, that's not sustainable. That's like a doctor saying, I want everyone to fall down so I can charge more. It doesn't work that way. So when we talk about a startup, we're not talking about just a high-tech thing. It can be a small business. It can be a different. But they're on a path. And that path is to figure out the business model, the problem, the solution, the unique value proposition, the channels on which you sell, the channels on which you distribute, the costs, the revenues. And we now know how to do that. And that's one of the many reasons why it's the best time to be an entrepreneur. So why do people want to be an entrepreneur? My friend in orange, let's get him a microphone. Why do you think people start being an entrepreneur? What causes them to make that decision?
I have no idea, mate.
What do you think? Why did you come here tonight? The free food?
Yes.
And your daughter?
Your daughter.
Okay, let's ask her. She's a smart one in the family. I have children too, so I know what that's like. Why do people want to be entrepreneurs? Why does your generation think rock stars aren't cool and entrepreneurs are?
I think there's kind of two ideas. It's they want to make or they want to be their own boss.
They don't want to answer to someone else. And more importantly, if I'm going to work my tush off, I want it to be for my family's benefit, not his family's benefit. So what was the second idea you had?
It's gone. Wait.
You're still getting a bag. So even if you let me down,
Okay.
You're still getting a bag. So we polled lots of people. And here are the reasons they gave. Had an idea that just had to go to market. Preferred to be my own boss. Desired better work life. Wanted to have more creation control. Other. What is the one thing that the Canadians are too shy to say aloud? What is the one thing that everybody needs to continue to sustain? Money. But yet, nobody wants to say it out loud. Even a social entrepreneur, one who works for the greater good, needs to make money. Because you've got to pay the lights, you've got to pay the property tax, you've got to pay the internet bill. So if you're not sustainable, then you're not making more than you're costing. And so it's a quest. It's a quest to find a business model that leaves you with more than losing. If the pizza cost $20 ingredients and you sold it for $18, it wouldn't be a good business model. So you have to test these things. And they test in real time. So if that's true, if there's so many reasons to be an entrepreneur, why haven't you started? Why haven't you started, my smart friend? Why haven't you started a business yet? I'm asking you. Yes.
Maybe I need a bit of monetary backing.
Needing money, a huge region that holds people back. Why else might someone not start being an entrepreneur? Don't talk about yourself, but someone you know. Go ahead.
You need the great idea.
You need an actual strong idea, and you want to know that it has the potential for the return, because it's a lot of work. Other reasons, sir, in the leather, looking like Tom Cruise on a good day? Does he have a good day? I don't know. Can we get him a microphone? Sorry, there are people at home supposedly, and I want to make sure they can hear you.
Hi, I was busy working, so I couldn't start a new startup.
I needed to feed my family. I needed to have a cash flow. Any other reasons people don't? Fear. I don't know how. What if I fail? What if I get it wrong? I hate to break it to you. You're going to fail. You're going to break it. It's not going to be perfect. Done today beats perfect tomorrow. Today the ethos is get a product, the most basic prototype, into the hands of early adopters and use their feedback to make it great. That's why we put the word beta on so many things. In Canada, we say beta is our way of saying, I'm sorry. So if you go to Gmail beta, what they're saying is, yes, it's email, but it's beta. So it may not work. And it might bounce back. And maybe the spell check isn't so good. Right? Beta is what gives you the permission not to be perfect. And that holds so many people back because they're not starting because it's not perfect. It's never perfect. The only guarantee of no success is not getting off the couch. Or as we say, because in Canada everything is hockey, you always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So do you want to die having a dream and never lived it? Or do you want to die making your dream a reality? That's the decision. And the main reasons when we do surveys, always the same: fear of failure, don't know how, feel low in confidence, feel too old, feel too young, waiting for a better time, waiting for my job to pay off, I don't have money, I don't live in an urban center where all this stuff happens, I don't even know how to run a business, let alone a startup that doesn't know what its business is. But what if I told you that that's all bullshit? What if I told you that things have changed in the last 2 decades to independently invalidate those reasons? I know you don't believe me, so I'm going to prove it to you. And in doing so, I'm going to prove why now is the very best time to be an entrepreneur. I'm not suggesting for a moment, having been a founder since 13, that it's easy. It is not. You try to figure out, how do I get an idea? How do I make it worth revenue? How do I test it? How do I quit my job? When do I quit my job? How do I know if this is the idea for me? How do I know if this idea is even an opportunity? Who are my customers? Where are my customers? What am I going to do first? It's overwhelming. But don't mistake risk for uncertainty. Being an entrepreneur is not risky because it's a known. You know. What you don't know is what is uncertain. How people will buy this. Will it resonate? What product variation will be the one that clicks? But that can be experimented through. Risk doesn't improve when you increase your knowledge base. Uncertainty does. And so the goal of the Lean Startup, which started on Stanford's campus in the early 2000s and was immortalized in Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, is launch. Launch early. Iterate often. Tell everyone it's not perfect. Because if people will pay you to solve a problem with a non-perfect solution, when it looks great, they'll buy it even more. And so you focus on those people who have the most inelastic need, the people suffering the most from the problem you want to solve. But again, it's so hard, so why is everyone doing it? These are magazine covers I shot in an airport a few months ago, which all focus on startups, entrepreneurs, founders. Kevin O'Leary, Robert Herjavec from America's Shark Tank. Here's a secret, they're Canadian. They were on our show first, but even Hollywood. Check out this quote. From the social network to HBO's new Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs have never been hotter in popular culture. Entrepreneurs are the new rock stars. So what's driving all of this? What's causing all of this? Well, there's two sets of factors. There's sort of a micro factor, like on a national basis, and then there's a global factor. So I'll just zoom in on one economy that we're all forced to watch, and that is the American. So by 2020, the workforce in America will be 50% freelance. You may call it casual. You may call it Uber. You may call it part-time. But less than 1 in 2 will be in a pensionable job, will know they have a future at the company, will even be under their health care or their retirement plans. Now, go forward 5 more years or 10 more years, and they believe that through automation and artificial intelligence, 40% of the jobs being done by that 50% won't even exist. So we're investing in companies that use artificial intelligence to be better lawyers. And a computer is much faster than a lawyer. So why pay $800 an hour when I can pay $8 an hour? So there are changes that are going to go, just as manufacturing went years ago, it's going to happen again. Even today, 28 million small businesses, which are defined as under 50 people in this data, makes up more than half of all US sales. And it makes up more than 2/3 of all the new jobs. Now, the good news is, you got Sydney at 12. These are the 20 best places to start a business. You got Melbourne at 18, and I don't want to be too un-Canadian, but number 8, best city in the world, number 8. Okay, that's fine. That's my city. In fact, we're very proud because we have 3 cities in the list, and you only have 2. No, I don't care about any of that. So what's driving all of these cities to adopt entrepreneurship? What drives the government of New South Wales to think jobs in the future will come from entrepreneurs? History, data, it's working in the rest of the world. But these are the 5 things that I believe are driving your accessibility. So why students don't have to limit themselves to t-shirt companies, why they can do amazing things. So I'm going to go through these with you and sort of put them in context. So I've been a professional investor since the late 90s. So in the dot-com boom between 97 and sort of 1999, I worked in New York on Wall Street as a very young analyst. And we used to go to the W Hotel on Thursday night on 5th, and people would come and pitch ideas with a business plan in one hand and a napkin that they drew the business on in the other. And they would leave with commitments of millions of dollars. And that's why we all lost billions of dollars, because that made no sense. Back in those days, I actually believed I could pick winners. I actually thought I was smart enough to know what the future held. And now I know that's just not true. Now I look to the customers to tell me what businesses are going to be strong, not me. But the key is that since the dot-com boom, we've had waves of startups. So in 1995, the dot-com boom began. And if I wanted to build, let's say, a jewelry store, an online jewelry store to sell my sister's jewelry, not only did I need awesome jewelry, but there was no Google ads. So I had to figure out a way to tell people what my URL was, what my domain name was, because you couldn't search for it because there was no Google. There was no eBay, there was no PayPal, there was no Amazon, there was no LinkedIn, no Facebook. So to build that jewelry store would take 2 years and $5 million. Everything was coded from scratch. You couldn't just click a button and drag the API for PayPal in. You couldn't just adopt LinkedIn or Facebook to identify users. You had to do all of that work by manual code. And that's why it took so long for us to figure out that a startup that sells socks to cats, not a good idea. 2 years later, millions of dollars, cats don't want socks. But we don't do that today. And the reason is this affordability. So after the dot-com boom, around 2005, Web 2.0 began. Google and Amazon and eBay are sort of in this generation. In this generation, you start to get Facebook and Twitter. You go forward again, now you start to get Tinder, and you start to get more the Snapchats, and you start to get more of the Spotifys, the cloud-based stuff. But what you should note is that that same jewelry store that takes orders and shows inventory and allows customers to buy has kept dropping in price. Why? Think about if you came to an island and it was uninhabited. If you wanted to build on that island, you'd have to figure out sewage and water and power from scratch. Now, 30 years later, after your grandfather already did that and your cousins already built the first store, you come to the same island. You're a little bit easier, and it costs a lot less. That's what's happened. Because of infrastructure that's been built and layer upon layer, generation after generation, the cost has dropped. When the age of unicorns, which is the current phase of startup world we're in, began in 2014, the cost to launch that exact same store was less than $5,000. Now, I'm happy to say if you move this over one more to 2019, the data will show you that number is now $500. My nephew could build a better jewelry store in a weekend, he's 16, in a weekend with $500 than I could build with $5 million. It's remarkable. Now, why does that make entrepreneurship better? I'll show you. How many people can borrow $5 million? Oh, sorry, just me? Okay. How many people can borrow, maybe using their house as collateral, $500,000? Tim, I'm looking at you, I know you can. Okay. How many could borrow $5,000? How many can borrow 50? And by borrow, I mean credit card, save up, take. That's all you need. Now, that won't build Google. You're not going to build Google for $500. But you are going to have enough time and energy to create a prototype that you can test with real-world customers. And when those real-world customers say this problem is worth solving and paying for, when people don't give you back your prototype after demos, you then know you have something. So when people come to us for money, we no longer ask to try to figure out if they're good or not. We see other results. What is your monthly revenue? How much money have you spent to date? Because the costs have dropped, everyone can get started. It also means you have no more excuse around money. The second of the reasons is on this slide. I looked up this morning and I was surprised to find that on the internet, according to the Netherlands registry, there are 3,424,971,237 people on the internet. Now, I think like me, you can understand the 3.4. It's about 65% of the planet. That kind of makes sense. How do they know the 37? Like when I turn on my laptop, does someone in the Netherlands go, that's one more? But the reason this is important is a little more subtle. It has to do with the Pareto principle and the long tail. 80% of your customers buy 20% of the same stuff. If you think about an old world bookstore, they only carried Stephen King because 80% of the people would buy that. They don't carry books on Klingon poetry because no one's going to buy that. But because these people are all online, they're all buying online. Let me prove it to you. How many people bought something online in the last 30 days? How many people bought something in the last 90 days? How many people have never bought anything online? Even you, sir. Okay? Everybody's doing it. Everybody. And as a result, you don't have a market that's limited. Give you a story. I'm a big geek. When I was a kid, I loved Star Trek. Anyone else like Star Trek? Oh, come on. Live long and prosper. No. When I was growing up, I wanted a Captain Kirk shirt. The gold one with the funky thing. I was 12. And even though I'm in a city of 6 million, there was no store that would sell it. Every year I had to wait for the science fiction and comic book convention. And it would tour different places every week because that's the only way they could sell Captain Kirk jerseys. So I had to save up all my allowance, all my paper route money, and wait. How do I buy Captain Kirk's jersey today? Online. You could be buying me one right now. Thank you. That's very kind. And it could even be delivered by Prime tomorrow. If that doesn't change the landscape about entrepreneurship, I don't know what does. It doesn't matter whether you are in love with lawn gnomes or you want to collect Game of Thrones underwear. Someone in the world is also interested in that. And as a result, you have access to these customers. And because you don't have to own a store and wait for someone to come in, it can keep going. And so you can live only selling 1,000 Captain Kirk jerseys. And so micro-commerce has become a huge part of entrepreneurship. The second thing that comes when you have more than 60% of the planet online is you're not limited to co-founders. When I was young, in my MBA school in the early 90s, I could build a business with the woman on my left or that guy on my right. Those are the only people I knew who were even interested in entrepreneurship. Maybe someone from my family or someone from the community, but that was it. Today we have a website called founderdating.com. It's the Tinder of startup founders. There's no sex, relax. And people put up their profile. This is what I'm looking for. I can code in 7 languages, but I don't have an idea to code. And they find someone from Holland who says, I have a good idea, but I can't code. And love happens. We have made a lot of investments, and in the last 5 years, almost 50% of them have had a founder outside of the country. Not an outsourced call center, a founder. Because they can Snapchat, they can Skype, they can FaceTime. You no longer have to live in New York, Boston, or Silicon Valley. The fourth of these reasons is one that you're experiencing right now. The Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, or as I like to call it, Australia's School of Entrepreneurship, is a gathering up of many institutions and stakeholders. And it's providing a platform for me to disseminate information. I'm the least of their awesome stuff. They have networking events, they have training, they have for-credit events, not-for-credit events. But these platforms have emerged around the world. Techstars is one of the most famous. It's an incubator in 32 different cities, and it created some amazing companies. The other thing that's happened is every aspect of running a business, from payroll to taxes to advertising on Google, is an app, is a software program you can subscribe to. I had a grad student put together a list of what software it would take to run a regular office, like an accountant's office, and how you could do it without ever having an office. It was less than $99 a month. And you had everything. HR, legal, and that. So when you have these assets, you don't have to learn bookkeeping. You can focus on what you're passionate about. When you have access to these knowledge platforms, like Clarity.fm. So Clarity.fm is a successful entrepreneur mentoring site. You look up an entrepreneur you want advice from, they connect you via your smartphone, the entrepreneur gets paid by the minute, and that money goes into charity. Right? So I do about 20 of them a month, and it all goes to a charity of my choice, and I speak to people around the world who want 10 minutes of my time. So that's something that 20 years ago you could never find. You wouldn't accidentally have someone that you just didn't know be able to talk to them. These are the tools and platforms that the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship is making available to all the different constituents, which is really a fancy way to say you. The final reason is one of my favorite. It's one of the most complicated. I spent my entire life looking for the treasure map to start up greatness. What 3 things do I need to do and tell my students for them to be billionaires? We wanted the path. And when I went to school in the 90s and I asked about that training, that education, they gave me a book by the late President Benjamin Franklin, who was a great entrepreneur but's been dead more than 200 years. I don't think he has a lot of relevance to the internet businesses that I work with. But today we don't do that anymore. We teach our students by pushing them into the environment and helping them digest. We call it experiential learning, internships, co-ops, ways for people to get first-hand knowledge without risking it all. But even better, because we have had thousands of successful startups and tens of thousands of startups that failed, and it's all happened within 20 years, academics can look at it. Most billion-dollar companies took generations to build, not less than 5. So we studied, myself and colleagues studied this for 3 years, and we went to find the hidden map. I was first turned on to the idea of a map. That's an episode of South Park telling you what the plan to be successful is. I don't think it's that funny, so I'll move on now. You don't watch South Park. I found this in 2007 at a dinner meeting I went to of Funders and Founders. It's a group of entrepreneurs and angel investors that share ideas over food. And someone handed this out, and I thought, isn't that cute? It's like the airline that explains how you don't die in the plane crash that's going to kill you. It's just fancy pictures. Like, that's not going to help you. But as I started to delve into it, and as I looked at the successful startups I had been a part of or I had learned from, I started to realize it's actually right. It talks about iterating and getting into the customer before the investor. It talks about doing things on a small scale, figuring them out, and then growing it. It talks about how you acquire that. The problem is it was written by someone from Stanford's graduate school. And I love Steve Blank, the professor who was behind this, and he's taught me a lot. But my students can't use this. We then went to MIT, which has the program called the Disciplined Entrepreneur, and it's a 21-step process to millions. If you're a Master's of Engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, not a real person, not like my students who never had a job in their life and can't show up on time, okay? You can't just throw them into Ivy League and hope they're going to learn. So we spent 3 years and $80,000 creating 100 steps to start up. And why is it 100 steps? It's the same distance. It's just much smaller steps. And that's what we did. 1 step, get a website name. 1 step, pick a name. 1 step, do a customer persona. And so each step has 2 videos available online. 1 video is a really smart professor and an animation, remember Face for Radio, and an animation that explains the theory. And then 1 10-minute video explains the exercise. I'll show you how we use it. We bring 120 students together. We put them in groups of 3. We kick them out. They start watching videos on their phones at homes, and they go through a series of exercises. What customer segment am I in? Well, I'm a student. Okay. What problems do students have? Okay. Let's go see if our friends who are students all have the same problems. Great. Let's go see if the university across the street has the same problems. Let's go see how much they'll pay for us to solve the problems. That's the process they're going through. At my school, entrepreneurship majors do this for 2 years over 4 semesters. That's what it takes for them to go, I have no idea what I'm doing, to break even, to actually making more money than they cost. It's a long process. But the number that have then gone on to do much better than break even proves that it works. People in our business school, but who aren't entrepreneurship majors, we call them entrepreneurship minors, they do this for 2 semesters, and they tend to get to about 70 or 75. All students on the campus, whether you're studying early childhood education or philosophy or radio and television, they are entitled to take the course for 1 semester. But it's not a course like you've ever seen. There's no lectures. The students work in groups, watch videos, do experiments in the real world with real customers, and then come to class to discuss it, to digest it, to see that you're having as much problem as you were having. And it doesn't feel good to sit in a mall and be yelled at by people. But it gives students who have never made a sales call in their life, let alone a cold call, a quick education on what the real world requires. And so we switch from being this sage on the stage to being this coach, this mentor that helps the student climatize. Now, you can go to 100stepstostartup.com. I've even arranged for you to get 70% off the price using the code SSE2019, or you can save your money and tell John Jones over there to bring it out for everyone for free. Who thinks free is better than $79? Right? There we go. But my point is, before you get the code, speak to him. He may have a way of making it even less expensive. But we use this as a way to learn. And so we give them a path. Now, please, I don't want you to think for 1 minute that this is true 100 out of 100 cases. You can't do pharmaceutical development casually testing on your students. Okay? They don't like that. Right? This won't work for biomedical, for aerospace engineering, This works for software, this works for apps, this works for social entrepreneurship, this works for small business, this works for trades, this works for entrepreneurs, this works for solopreneurs. But in the real world, it's not a path. You get to here and it screws up, so you got to go back to here, and we call that a pivot. And then you get a little farther and it screws up, so you got to go back. So in reality, you end up iterating. But that iteration is learning, and that learning gets you closer and closer to your goal, which isn't making a startup that makes a pink automobile. It's making enough money to keep doing what you want to do with the rest of your life. And so we have found that when you combine the path and you combine the tools, everybody can do entrepreneurship. I want to finish with just 2 quick points, and then we'll open it up for some questions. The first is really about this. When you go on a diet, everyone thinks it's the choice of diet. When do you start? That's important. Let me just tell you the truth, having lost 50 pounds recently. It's not the decision to go on the diet. It's shutting your mouth at every meal. It's reminding yourself that great works take small steps. And entrepreneurship is just like that. Entrepreneurship is not a black box. Entrepreneurship is not some art form. Entrepreneurship is not some science. It's a practice, like playing the guitar or driving a bicycle, or riding a bicycle, driving a motorcycle. They're all the same. Playing golf. You learn by doing. And so the job of educators, the job of the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship isn't to teach you entrepreneurship. That's 1996. It's to facilitate a safe place for you to explore and stretch and learn and be entitled to make mistakes and be encouraged. That's what the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, which I think should be called Australia's School of Entrepreneurship, is really about. And that's what startup success is about. It's not the one big thing. I'm going to start today. It's getting up every day and working away at it. Because overnight success is years in the making. I want to finish with this, which is my plea to our young people in the audience. Our world has serious problems, like climate change, like poverty, like the inappropriate distribution of wealth. But it's the entrepreneurs that in the last 100 years have innovated and brought us to what I believe a higher quality of life. It's the entrepreneurs that teach us you don't have to write a Dear John letter to break up with your boyfriend. You can just text him, because we created that. And you don't have to wait 2 weeks to get accepted to university. They email you directly. It's entrepreneurship. As Schumpeter said in the late 1930s, entrepreneurship is really what drives the economy by keep making it better, right? We had Encyclopedia Britannica, now we have Wikipedia. We had snail mail, now we have email. Innovation comes from entrepreneurs. And to be an entrepreneur, to make that move, you're not born an entrepreneur, you're not trained to be an entrepreneur, you choose to be an entrepreneur. You get up one day and say, this is what I'm going to do. And the next day you say the same thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many variations of them. Right? We have a lot of newcomers in Canada, people who weren't born there that moved to country. And often their credentials aren't seen as acceptable. So they have to create a business. And you know what? They do it because they have to. You have to. Not just for me, not just for you, but for all those that are going to come after us. We need to give you the courage to start, the confidence to follow through, and most of all, the path and tools to get you there. And I hope that when you put all these things together, you will be Wantrepreneur no more. My name is Dr. Sean Wise. I've got a new book coming out with all the proceeds going to charity. I think it's 99 cents on Amazon, so buy quickly so we can give our students some extra money next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We'll open to questions. You could just wait for the microphone.
I will say that the more questions we have, the longer the bar is away. How about a question in return for a beautiful take-home present? This young lady over here. Didn't you already get one? No, you had a bad idea. Okay. Oh, let's hear it first. Hold on.
As you know that it's about failure, right? Like how you get to success. But at some point, when you keep failing and failing, I see my father and then he's been doing something for like 30 years. And then it's not as easy as whatever. It's like the whole story you see out there. It's like dinosaur life. It's so hard. And then like at some point, how long do you think you could like keep up on it and until you
So the goal is to find a sustainable, scalable business model before you run out of resources. Both of my parents were high school dropouts, and both of them were entrepreneurs. My mother was a tremendous success, and my father was never. And he died having kept trying every day. And he told me something that I'll never forget. You only fail when you stop learning. And so your father may not have found the right business model, but I applaud him. That isn't an unemployed person. That's someone making a difference. And statistically, that is incredibly hard. Please do not take away from my glibness that I think anything but that. But that's been hard for hundreds of years. People have been trying to innovate and make life better for their next generation. And all I'm saying is what's holding you back isn't what needs to hold you back. So I would suggest that your father re-examine the assumptions in his business model that aren't proving out to be true and try to experiment with other options. Maybe his product, whatever it is, or his service, whatever it is, isn't being sold in the way that people want to buy it. Or maybe no one wants to buy it. But at least get the data and make the decision. But no one should ever tell someone when it's time to quit, other than your spouse, your partner, your life mate. I mean, that's a decision that the family has to come to.
But do you have to set like a target, let's say like 10 years, and then let's see like, you know, like how long until you know that you either give up or like keep going?
How big is a piece of string? Who is John Galt? These are unknowable questions. They're specific to each person. And I would be remiss to try to give your father some answer off the top of my head. Can we have another question? Another question? Let's give her the bag. Thank you. That's why I'm not an athlete. Yes, sir, the handsome man in the middle who wants a bag to go home with. Is someone going to give him a microphone right here? We have a gentleman right here. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at him, and there we go. We'll go here, and then we'll go to you next, sir. We'll go to you next. Go ahead.
Do you believe that easy accessibility has caused market oversaturation?
Yes. Next question. Yeah. So what he's asking is there a downside to everyone being able to start up their crazy business? Catswithsocks.com. More seriously, it is and it isn't. So from my job perspective, it's much harder because I have more what they call noise than signal. So that forces me to use heuristics. It forces me to use pattern matching and to look for things. And that means I'm blinded to other things. So the mere proliferation of emails that I get, fund me, is unmanageable. So yes, everyone being able to come to the party has made a lot of people at the party longer than they should be. However, economic evolution will play its own part in all of this. Right? All we're talking about is quitting sooner, failing faster, learning before it costs you your house by going slow, by taking steps, by iterating. And that's what I find more. So yes, lots of people are doing it, but I don't want to lie to you. Out of 130 or 40 students who participate in one of our 100 Steps class, 20 have dropped by week 6. They don't like the uncertainty. They want me to tell them what class notes to read, how many pages in the textbook, and I won't do that. But as the semester goes on, people get into it. But I don't want you to have a false perception. One of the outcomes at the end, when they do their little reflection video, this is what I've learned, is I've learned I'm not an entrepreneur. And I would rather my students learn that in school, where it's safe, than after 30 years of struggling to make something a reality. Yes?
My question was, how do you talk to people to test out your idea and to seek the capital you require, whilst not talking to people who might steal your idea?
So those are 3 questions, so I'll try to do them individually. We have proven that the risk of idea theft is outweighed by the benefit of customer interaction. So in most cases, sharing the idea gets you feedback and allows you to grow it. That isn't the same as giving you the recipe or the algorithm or the code. When I talk about sharing ideas, I accept as a lawyer that an idea isn't patentable. It's the actions that that idea can be executed against that where the patent lies. So the idea of Google sorting out all these new websites and using an algorithm called PageRank, that isn't the intellectual property. It's the patent that underlies the PageRank. So when you think, well, maybe this person will take my idea, it does happen. Lyft and Uber. In all my years, in 19 years as a professional investor, I've seen it once. I've seen during the dot-com boom a company called, it was either called Fetch or it was called Rover. It was something like that. It was in New York, and it was all about delivering in under 30 minutes anything you need. And one of the investors thought it was such a great idea, but such a shit management team that they just did it themselves. When the market eventually caught on to that, when all the blogs and transparency came, people tanked the company. So again, yes, but if all you have is an idea and that idea is so easy to steal, then I would challenge you, sir, to say you don't have very much. It's taking that idea and engaging with it that builds the value. It's not the idea alone. That being said, if you're doing technology, register your patent. There are lots of government sources that will fund a $5,000 patent application because they want that application in here. But the moment you file a patent application, there are several jurisdictions full of entrepreneurs who don't agree to the World Trade Organization that will take your patent off of the US patent site and build it tomorrow. So which is more risky? I don't know. The first part of your question, could you repeat for me?
How do you share your idea with others to get capital?
Well, capital is different. Because to get capital today, you need traction. If all you have is an idea, don't bother. No one's walking, sorry. Only a handful of humans on the planet are walking around with ideas that get funded. Elon Musk, Bill Gates doesn't have a lot of trouble getting funding. But the real humans, it doesn't work that way. You're expected to put your own money in to make a prototype and then to get customers to use the prototype, and then you go to the investors. As for sharing with people, NDAs don't work. Right? Either for a variety of reasons, but mostly because lawyers are expensive. And as a result, you have to really think about why you're sharing and the benefits of collaboration and not be so worried about the intellectual property, because you can steal an idea, but it's not the idea that's fundable, it's the business. I think we have time for one more because I see Aaron looking at the bar and getting excited. Let's go with the lovely lady with the red scarf.
Hi, Sean. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for coming and sitting through this time.
I have a career and a background in digital marketing, and I sort of got tired of selling things to people that they didn't already need. I'm doing a Master of Social Entrepreneurship at the moment, and awesome. I wanted to check with you with respect to what the opportunities and challenges for a social entrepreneur are in the times that we live in.
So I love social entrepreneurship, but I also have very unique definitions. The noun is entrepreneurship. So every social entrepreneur must first and foremost be an entrepreneur. So social entrepreneurship has to address an unmet market need and has to do so in an exponentially better way. If email was a little faster than the postal service, we wouldn't all have it. If Tinder got you more rejection than going to the bar, the kids wouldn't use it. So I think social entrepreneurship is a great place to learn, especially on campuses, because instead of taking the profits, you're putting it back in the business. So we have a social entrepreneurship zone on campus where we actually have people who have done that successfully. But you're still an entrepreneur. You still have to bring in more money than you pay out. And if you do that, then you'll be able to continue to do that for a long time. My favorite example of social entrepreneurship is Jessica Lively's kiva.org, so kiva.org. So she's basically a bank that takes deposits from entrepreneurs in the first world and funnels them to entrepreneurs in the third world. You're talking $20, $50, where in Guatemala might be enough to buy a sewing machine that lets you start a sewing business. So kiva.org is social entrepreneurship. They plow back in all of the money. The CEO is still making six figures. There's nothing wrong with making a living if you're doing something good and meaningful. So I think there's a world of opportunity in social entrepreneurship, but I'll give you a cheat. One of the best things you can do as a social entrepreneur is copy a for-profit model and just reinvest the profits. What do I mean by that? Let's say you're a documentarian and you want more documentaries in the world. You could create Netflix and not charge the $9.99. And then more people would access your documentaries. And then maybe people are watching them so much that other people will put them up. And maybe it's being watched so much that people will click on ads. Oh, wait, it's YouTube. So there are versions. Kiva.org is Kickstarter for not pure financial benefit. So what am I trying to tell you? Go look at the things that have been widely adopted, like a Tinder, like an Uber, and think, how could that model be used to solve homelessness or food shortage? I was at the Sydney Big Kitchen. If you've never seen it, it's quite a work of art. It's a community organization, a social entrepreneurship that makes food for those that are in distress. Women relocating, people without money, people without nutritious food. Everyone gets it. You don't have to ask. They deliver hundreds of thousands of meals a year. But they didn't stop there. What they did was they said, we're not using the kitchen from midnight till 8 a.m. Who could use it? And they started renting it out to food entrepreneurs who couldn't afford to buy a commercial kitchen. And they charged them $10 a day. If you want to run a food company, you don't start with a $100,000 restaurant. You start with a food cart. And if you can't afford a food cart, you get a hot dog cart. I hope you have hot dog carts here. If you can't get a hot dog cart, you join a market and sell off the table. But you don't go send her future wealth in a restaurant that you haven't proven is going to work. And so using that philosophy, the lean startup is what the approach is called. I have seen amazing things. We have a student named Mayan Ziv. She was my master's student in digital management. She has suffered from multiple dystrophy since she was a child. She's in a wheelchair. And I told her, what's her biggest problem? What's the one problem your life would be better if you solved? And I got an unexpected answer. I'm tired of going to dates with guys who can't tell me if there's a ramp. Because she shows up for a date and she can't get in the building. Or all her classmates go to a pub and she's stuck outside. And what world are we living in where that's acceptable? This isn't dinosaur days, right? This is the real world. So she creates the Yelp of accessibility. Now, she has no coding. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts. She's a photographer. But she was sick of it. And in the same year that she started building her prototype, which was built not on proprietary technology, it was built on Google Maps. So what happens is anyone can go and add a pin. So when I finish here, I'll walk around the building and I'll show where's the elevator with the braille, where's this, just because I want to. Now she's gone the next level. She's got students to install it on her phone. And the phone checks the GPS location versus the map. And it tings the student. Hey man, we don't got any pins here. Can you help? And the kid takes 30 seconds and shows the pin, and the rest of the world has the information forever, or until they tear down the building. Social entrepreneurship. How does she fund it? One of the banks said, we'll give you $1 million because we love all Canadians, including those with disabilities. And she said, sure, I'll take your $1 million as soon as you fix your 140 branches that aren't acceptable. And she said this in front of people, and to the chair of the bank, which is like $1 billion company, and they did. They're halfway now. But she has taken their money. I told her to take their money. And they promised that by 2020, no one will not be able to get in their bank. Now, should they have done that anyway? In Ontario, the state I live in, the law says any building or any company that houses more than 20 people in one location must be fully accessible. But they forgot to include a fine. They forgot to include an inspector. They forgot to include a reporting requirement. So guess what happens? Nothing. You know, if you didn't have food inspectors, do you think the restaurants would be so quick to be healthy? So what did Mayan do? She solved her own problem. She used the lean startup. And for the first half a year, it was all fake. It was all just in a Google map. It wasn't owned by her. Because why should she try to build it before she knows anyone cares? Then she took it to the Paralympics. Because where are you guaranteed to have customers that need accessibility? The Paralympics, right? Because not only are the athletes there, but their families are. And who has a vested interest in accessibility? Paralympians. But it's interesting. Since that time, she's moved her customer segment. In Canada, as I'm sure in Australia, by 2020, 20% of our population will have a mobility impairment. My mom is 80. She has a little walker. It's very cute, but she can't use it on the ice. If it snows, she's not going anywhere. So we send her to Florida, which is what we do with all our old people. But my idea here is that she needs that app too. And so all of a sudden, my aunt's getting money, not just from governments and banks, but from Google. Why does Google call? Hey, why are these pins all appearing on this map? Why are there hundreds of thousands in weeks? And she tells them. So now she's negotiating a deal to sell her data to Google. I got to think that's a good deal. I hope I answered the question. I'll be around for a while. Thank you very much for all your participation. If you deserve a bag, come on up and get a bag. Otherwise, go get yourself a beer. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Sean. Much appreciated. And anybody who wants to speak to Sean directly, I'm sure will do so over that beer. We have live streamed. We will make the stream available on our website as well. So if you have a friend or a colleague or a family member who you think might be interested, please feel free to send those over. Once again, thank you for your attendance tonight, and look forward to meeting some of you over a beer. Thank you.